All right, good morning, everybody. It is a minute or two after 9 o'clock, so let's get the ball rolling. Good Monday morning. Oh, love a rainy Monday morning, don't we? um, yes, so I want to start this morning with just checking in with folks to see how everybody is. I'm going to put on my headphones because I hear much better and tune in much better out of my house. With sometimes I have a 10-year-old that's in virtual school and other noises in my house, like all of us have sometimes, human and non-human. So let me get this. All right, can everybody hear me okay? Um, so I want to check in and see, first off, if anybody has any questions about last last week in our presentation of the course and what we're expecting in the semester. Any any concerns? Any misunderstanding or anything that you need clarification on?
I'm
I have
pretty.
a question. Oh,
Okay.
sorry. I'll wait. Justin, if you want to go first.
Okay, Justin.
Oh no, I'm sorry. You go because I was just going to say I'm fine.
Okay, Nancy, you're up then.
Okay. Okay. Um, I actually have a question regarding the research project on a primate that we of our choosing.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, there's a lot of places that are not necessarily open, and I was trying to research. I've chosen my primate, but I was trying to research maybe where I can kind of do like an observation of them. So what I mean, am I able to use text like if I find literature or books and
Yeah.
stuff like that on?
Yeah. I like I said, I do not expect you to go observe. I mean, if you want, if you can, and if there's a zoo that is open, I think yeah, I don't actually don't know the state of zoos right now. Nashville, um, I went to Nashville Zoo over the spring with my girls when we were early on in the lockdown, and they were socially distancing their interactions there. But yeah, if you can get your hands on a visit, great. If not, there is so much literature out there, and I've got a couple links on the assignments document that takes you to zoos. Zoos have great websites with lots of information, um, and yeah, that's Gabby says this chat zoo is open. And so, yeah, but like I said, it's not required. I can't require that. Not everybody could do that. But if you can, then great. Help supplement it, but it won't count against you to say the least. Now there are lots of videos of all these primates on YouTube. I show them as we cover them. I show some of them, but there's an enormous amount. If you just start to go down the rabbit hole of a primate, then on YouTube you'll find lots. I think they even have videos on certain zoo websites as well. So, but that assignment's not due till down the road. I appreciate you working ahead though, Nancy. But for those who are stressed, that might not have looked at the syllabus yet or look at the schedule reading, that's in the second unit. And so it's a little down the road, but it's great to be planning ahead, to say the least. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question about the book.
Okay.
So, sometime last week, somebody mentioned something about there being a discount code for the book, and I went to go like put it in my cart, but it still like wouldn't put in like a promo code or anything.
Okay, so you went. I'm sorry, I missed the last part. I missed the. You went and put it in the cart.
Yeah, like the only option I had was to buy it, not to rent it.
Okay, you're trying to do this from the bookstore.
I just clicked the. Don't you have the link on the
Yeah,
main page to where I can buy it? That's what I
yeah,
used.
yeah. Okay, so that's. Somebody in the class said that you could rent it. Who was it that said that? Was it Samantha? Who was it that said that you could rent it?
That was me.
Where
But
did you?
if you rent it from the bookstore, it's not going to give you the access code. You have to actually go through that link that you provide on the main page. And
Mhm.
then when you click on that link, it opens up MindTab and then it takes you to Cengage. And then it'll give you like a 7-day free trial. And it eventually will have you purchase the actual, stuff. It kind of walks you through it. But if I went through the bookstore and it only gave me options to either buy the book or rent it, it does not come with the access code. So you have to be careful with that. I just eventually had to buy the access code through that link that you have on the main page.
And I emailed the bookstore on Friday afternoon. I did not hear back, but that's not unusual. I will follow up again this afternoon, and I'll call the bookstore this time. Sometimes he is just not accessible. So I will follow up to see why we're not getting a code through the bookstore. That's something that I know for certain we should be doing. Um, so yeah, Gabby says they have a discount for unlimited rate. Okay, so all right. Yeah. Any other questions? Does that help you, Haley? Haley?
I do it with just 70, and I was doing it through the link on the page that you provided.
Okay. So I missed you. You were muted for a second. Unmute and say what you say at the
I
very
said I
beginning.
didn't understand that how to get it for $30 because the only thing that I could see was the $70 one. I mean, I
Okay.
seen the free trial. I will say I did see that, but that's
Okay.
the only thing that I seen other than paying $70 for the book.
Samantha asks, why are we using MindTap instead of eLearn? We are using both. MindTap is the online, only the online version of the textbook, and they do not have Cengage um, does not have quizzes for eLearn, so I can't load anything from their their publication source to eLearn. So the reason the reason I require the MindTap is because of the quizzes, which is a learning mechanism. Um, they have other things that you can play with on the on the platform, but you don't have to take part in those. But I want the quizzes done. Any other questions? Okay, I will follow back up with a bookstore right after class or after I get out of my meeting after class. So later this morning, see if I can get to the bottom of what the problem is with why we're not getting a code. So with that said, I asked this question to my other anthropology course. I'm going to ask it here just to get a feeling about how people are feeling about the course. And so let me share my screen. Present that. Everybody needs to sign in to menti.com, www.menti.com, and I'll give everybody a minute to do it on your phone or open up another window. It's possible. If it's just technologically impossible, then you don't have to participate. But I'm curious about how people are feeling right now about the class. Stressed, at peace, confident.
What is that site called? Oh, Menti. Okay, I see it.
Menti, yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. MENTI. think I'm going to be playing with this semester off and on, so it'd be a good one for you to just bookmark. I think other professors are leaning towards using this because we were introduced to it in a presentation on right before school started, and it kind of spread like wildfire. Like, oh, that's a cool tool. Oh, I'm saying something went wrong. I need to reload. Are people having problems with it? Let me see.
It's asking like, do we have to answer all those questions first?
No, it should just be one question. And let me get a different code here. Try this.
Okay.
Yeah, try this code, 4708060.
Yeah, I got a question that said, what do anthropologists study? And I answered that, and now it said, thank you. And that's it on my screen.
Yeah,
Okay.
I got the same thing.
You got the same thing? Okay, you know what? Then, all right.
I redid the code, but I didn't put spaces in it. And it actually took me to the, how are you
know
feeling
what?
about the class?
I see the problem. I have two questions that I was hoping to. The second one I was hoping to do in a little bit, but let's just go to this one first, and then y'all are ahead of me, to say the least, but in technology. Let me get. All right, so yeah, if let's what should we do here? I don't want to lose this information because this is all great. I'd like to go back and try to do the. Okay, so now we got some response to the how do you feel about this class? So I'm seeing 3 people have responded to that. What are y'all are you still not seeing Nancy? Are you not able to see the okay, we got 4 folks.
I just did mine. Were you able to
Yeah.
see it?
Yeah, I got 5 respondents now. All right, well, 5 out of 9. I guess it's not bad. But 2 at peace, 2 got it, 1 stressed. I know one particular student has told me that her normal go-to is always stress, so I'm not going to be too stressed about that 1 stress if that is the case. Yeah, it's not unusual, of course, to be stressed about a course coming into it. I feel like my stress. I felt something was wrong if I wasn't stressed. It's kind of like when I would do a performance, and if I weren't stressed right before a performance, then I was not feeling like I was on top of it. So we all have different reactions to stimuli, and so yeah, it's okay to be a little stressed, but if you are overburdened and if you feel completely stagnated and overwhelmed, please reach out to me by email, and we can set up or just hang out after class, and we can talk through your stress a little bit. So, all right, so let's just use that to segue into the PowerPoint and talk about anthropology. I like the responses I'm seeing on the second question. But let me get my PowerPoint up so that we can look at the context of that question. All right, so what we have is a schedule here that we will try to stay on top of, but This is what we're planning on doing for this unit. Today and Wednesday we'll cover chapter 1, which is a very introductory, like, um, exploration of the entire textbook, basically, and then also putting into context physical anthropology with the other 3 sub disciplines of anthropology: linguistics and cultural and archaeology. But so we intend to be covering this all the way through February the 19th, when the assignment and the exam will open up and be open till the 22nd. So I'll be throwing this up on the on the slide. I'll try to do almost every class, but every other class at least, just to bring us back to where we are, to keep us on track. It's more for my purpose than for your purpose, but it's for both of our purposes to try to stay on track and keep us oriented on the map of what we're following. So in this chapter, we are possibly going to glance at this documentary, Mysteries of Mankind. It's a very dated but very still relevant. One thing great about this subject matter is that the old materials are still useful, but there's always new materials being produced that are more up to date. But there's some old stuff that I still draw upon. So yes, defining anthropology. This is let's look at what some of your responses were before I actually unveil my own. So I'm seeing humans, yes. Bones and dead things, okay. Yeah, the study of humans and how we evolved, yep. Study of how societies and cultures and their development, yes. Depending on what type of anthropologist they are, it can range from evolution of animals in the earth to forensics. Some anthropologists solely the physical aspects, like land features, okay. So we need to, we are in that one. There's definitely the land features and the physicality of the environment is important in physical anthropology, because we're studying how humans, and that's the first answer in blue in humans, that is human, human, humanity, the study of humanity. But when we study the environment, we're always studying it in relationship to how it impacts humans and how humans impact the environment. Yes, we do study culture. Culture tends to be a baseline for much of anthropology, but there is the biological component, the physicality, that is always in conversation with culture. So we have yes, we study other things besides humankind, but typically we're looking at the conversation, other things, other animals, other features of life on Earth and its relationship to humans. So yeah, some I think a lot of folks have a good idea of what we're talking about when we talk about anthropologists. Let's go a little bit deeper into that. It's a little funky with PowerPoint on MS Teams. I have to first do the slideshow, and then I have to hit the swap presenter view, and so you got to do this, got to do that, and then we get to where we want to be. So anthropology is the systematic study of mankind. So important note, systematic. We have a orientation towards scientific inquiry, which has a system to it. More on that in the next chapter. What and how and why do people do what they do? So we want to understand what is the driving force to behavior. So we can get into some psychology there, but how we adapt to our environment and the culture of our environment is always a a return point for anthropologists, and how we have varied in what we do throughout the ages, that is prehistory and history. So we're going beyond the written 5,000 year history to try to understand what we were doing before we started writing things down. And so we have artifacts because before the written record, we had to infer through our detective work into the findings. Yes, the stones and bones of the ground. So yes, and also before I leave this second point, why populations have varied throughout the time, we want to understand diversity of today, the diversity of today, what is happening in Asia and what is happening in Americas and in Europe and Africa, and what people are doing and why they look differently, why do we behave and look differently. Those are the variations to understand the differences. So all that to say, our entranceway of understanding these differences and our entranceway into studying humanity is through what is referred to as typical characteristics. What are typical characteristics of human populations? Does anybody know what typical characteristics? You might want to take a guess. What is a typical characteristic of humans?
Okay, this is a complete guess, but maybe language.
Okay. Yes, I mean, and this is, folks, please, I love guesses. And this, when you guesses sometimes are you definitely have the most creative and exploration of subject matter. So yeah, so language. How is language typical? Language is typical in that we have things we don't think about. Typical characteristics are things that we don't think about. So how we speak and what we say. It's like you'll hear me say this. I had a theater a director one time say to me, he's a theater anthropologist. He said to me, you know, it's like trying to see the color of your own eyes. And so as an anthropologist, you try to step outside of your own eyes and see what is typical about your own behavior and what you don't think anything about. It's kind of boring stuff, actually. It's kind of like mundane. It is how we sit, how we talk, how we eat, how we drink, what we eat, what we drink, what we say. Those are windows into who we are as a human group. It's what distinguishes us from other groups. So that variation that we're talking about of understanding between human populations is the entranceway, the door into that is typical characteristics. Okay. Any questions about that? So, what are people? If we are anthropologists, are studying humanity, people is the subject of our study. What technically defines a person? This is obviously something we take for granted. What is this animal of a human? And so anthropologists have had a evolving definition, and it's changed over time, to say the least, as we have come across people who are different from us. So we had this standard. Europeans had a standard of humanity, and then when they started to, and that standard, by the way, was defined by what we refer to as Aristotle's doctrine of natural slavery. This was kind of the the standard for our understanding of human population up to about, well, I would say Darwin's exploration of evolution. This was kind of the gold standard. And the Aristotle doctrine of natural slavery goes back to 330 BC. It is basically says that there is a natural order in which man sits in authority over woman, child, and slave, and that is kind of put a hierarchy on humanity that puts the white male at the top of the world. So we'll look at that a little bit closer. Well, not that particular doctrine, but hierarchies and how that has changed over time. And the next phase was defined by our exploration of the Europeans. That is, when I say our, and I'm definitely European descent myself. So, but in anthropological terms, the study of others. Next happened European orientation was through the first exploration of the Americas, and the New World was referred to as the New World. And that those first explorations were missionaries, people looking for passage, traders looking for passages to the quote unquote Orient. Colonial administrators, they would come back with stories, and they would tell academians these stories, and that was our understanding, our baseline for understanding humans of other populations. So and it typically set in solid solidarity with Aristotle's doctrine of natural slavery. So it always confirmed and validated. Darwin came along in the 19th century. You're gonna get an earful of Darwin in the next chapter. So we won't stay too long on talking about what he found and what it means to anthropology, because we're going to definitely look at that much deeper in chapter 2. But he came along and he said that we evolved, that all life forms evolved in relationship to our environment. His intention was not to put a hierarchy on humanity around the world, but social scientists use that notion of the strong shall survive to say that there are savages, barbarians, and civilized. And so we have evolved as time has unfolded. Europeans have evolved to become the civilized, and it is designated because of our agriculture. And so basically agriculture and how we produce our food became the baseline for being quote unquote civilized. So anyway, more on that in the coming chapter. But are there any questions at this point? I cannot see y'all's chat, so please let me know if there's a chat in there that I'm missing. I believe when somebody does write a chat, it goes across my screen really fast, and I can try to keep an eye on that, but I'm not seeing anything at this point. All right, so questions that anthropologists ask. What is a hominid? What is a hominin? These are terms that you will become familiar with over the semester. A hominid, ID that is the lineage. If you follow the human lineage back to our primate apes, you will find that is the connection between us and the great apes. The hominin, IN, is the human lineage that goes back before, right after we have broken off from the great apes. So that goes back 6 to 7 million years ago. These are questions, that we're going to be, these are the larger questions that we're going to be exploring in much more detail in the coming chapters. We asked the question, what is a species? A species is a, what makes us unusual about humanity, that is. What makes us unusual is that we are a species, we are the only species that occupy the niche that we survive through. And so a species is, well, let's start with a niche. This is the place in which a species lives and in its physical biological environment. And it's what we eat, is where we live as far as in relationship to other species eating. Are we, where are we? Do we eat other species? Do we, where do we, who eats who along the chain? Where do we exist on that chain of who eats who? So together, ecological niches make up and sort of the ecosystem. It is only recently that sapiens have become the only species of our niche. Prior to modern humans, it used to be that there was always at least more than one, at least two hominin species living on the planet. So the Neanderthals and Homo sapiens were coexisting, but there was also a period of time where you found Homo erectus and Neanderthals and Homo sapiens overlapping with each other. There's a small period of time during which they coexisted, although they never saw each other. Although Neanderthals and Homo sapiens did see each other, and they did procreate. So yeah, this is the storyline that we're going to definitely delve into later in the semester. So this is definitely another question. How do we become the only species of hominin in our niche? What happened to the Neanderthals? This is the million-dollar question that continues to sort of haunt anthropologists because there's a couple different theories, and there's definitely conflict within anthropology about what happened to the Neanderthals. And do other species have culture? So, Neanderthal, there's an evolving understanding of the kind of culture that Neanderthals have. I'm reading a book right now called The Clan of the Cave Bear, written, I think, 40 years ago, and it's about, and I'll talk a little bit more about this later in the semester, but it's a great book, and it's a fictionalized prehistoric storyline that goes back to sort of the imagination. This author's gone into the imagination of what it was like for humans, the first human to come into contact with Neanderthals, and how interbreeding might have happened. And it creates a picture in which humans are extraordinarily more evolved as far as with physical ability and with cultural complexity. So we've had this long-standing understanding that humans own culture, that we are modern Homo sapiens are very much, well, we've taken culture to the next level. Well, Neanderthals also had it. We now know that Neanderthals could speak. We know that they created art. This is things that we've learned over the last 30, 40 years. So this book that I'm reading is definitely outdated in its understanding of Neanderthals. But even if you take a step outside of the hominin, because the Neanderthal is a hominin, go outside of the hominin and we look at the great apes. And you look at chimps and bonobos and gorillas, and you realize, yes, they have culture too. But there's something unique about hominin culture. There's something unique about human culture. And that's what we will definitely explore. This is when we talk about humanity, we are, as far as taking culture to the next level, culture defines us in such a way that it is a signature to our existence. Please stop me at any moment to ask questions, if anybody has any questions. Okay, so we have 4 fields that we're going to look in this chapter. And these are the 4 subfields of anthropology. We have, of course, the cultural side. And and I divide anthropology, these four fields, into two sides, so the physical and the cultural. And what's unique about the physical side is that we only have one discipline that really is focused on it, but you could say that archaeology also focuses on the physical side. Um, but archaeologists' real interest is to dig into um, the, the the ground, literally, in order to bring up the history of culture, and because they're looking for artifacts. So, um, and the question of what is culture? This is the cultural side, and linguistics. The entranceway into culture is, of course, language. Culture anthropology, our entranceway into culture, is definitely through talking to people and reading as well, but interviewing and definitely exploring humans today and yesterday as well. But this is typically culture anthropologists. Our focus is on humans today. Often we're comparing old cultures, obviously, to the present day culture. So physical side is the primary task is to ask the question of how do we get to be culture bearing animals? How is it that it became our signature? What is the storyline behind that? Um, and and then we get into this question of nature versus nurture, human nature, and as opposed to nurture, the culture. Um, this is putting humans into the animal kingdom by looking at us as animals, but also looking at us as and therefore that is the nature part of humanity, and we do have that to consider. We look at our physicality, we look at the things we have in common in our our body, our physical body, our hands, our eyes, and our physical apparatus. But this places us into relationship to the other primates because we are a primate. Um, so we ask the question: where do humans fit into the world of evolution? How do we compare to other living species and prior non-living ones? Um, this is all just questions. Anthropologists, we ask questions. Questions are everything. This is what makes us unique, I think, in the world of social sciences. Is we always start with questions. Um, are there any questions, by the way? Okay, so um, here we go. We have the four fields, like I mentioned, and the cultural side. You have underneath the cultural side, you have the three disciplines there. Physical side, which we're going to explore first. You have paleontology, primatology. We're going to look at these a little bit closer in a minute, and then you have, on top of all those four fields that are defined by these two sides, you have what's called applied anthropology, which we'll look at as well. So it's kind of the fifth field, you could say, applied anthropology is. But it is also kind of interwoven into all four fields. Again, more on that later. So physical, well, since this is what we're going to be studying this semester, let's start with that. And it is a discipline that was established in the 19th century. Darwin's on the Origins of Species in 1858 was really the launching pad for biological anthropology. Darwin was a naturalist. He was an explorer of the animal kingdom, and we're gonna go down his journey. He took a 5-year trip around the world on boat, and we'll talk about what his mission was on that boat and why he took that trip. But that trip itself was kind of the launching of him connecting the dots of other scientists that he was reading at the time. So these early physical anthropologists were very much well interested in exploring how humans came to be what they are, into human evolution and variation. But typically they started with predisposition towards that theory with religion. So we'll get into religion, of course, here. So the first half of the 20th century was very much, well, in their physical exploration. And I'm seeing there's a message. Hang on, let me. Got to figure a way to, here we go. Okay. Yes, is it true that Darwin pulled a lot of his info from the works of his uncle? We will talk about his uncle. Yes and no. His uncle, well, his grandfather actually, was not his uncle, but his grandfather, Erasmus Darwin, was a philosopher and poet, and his philosophy and poetry was very much, well, romanticizing and very much, well, exploring this notion of how species evolved into other species, and he was exploring in a very theoretical and philosophical level that evolution from one species to the next was happening, but he did not actually go into the science of it. But again, yeah, we'll come back to Erasmus and Darwin. It's a good question. Yeah, so early 19th century or 20th century, early 1900s, anthropology, physical anthropologists, you could say very much, well, was still saturated with a hierarchy of putting people based upon differences into this very much, well, you could say Eurocentric perspective that blacks and Asians were lower than whites, and they would devote, you know, years and years of studying brain size and head shape, and you know, they used prisons and mental health hospitals as their basically laboratories to explore what's called anthropometry and craniometry, to try to establish this hierarchy and to validate the hierarchy that they had from years and years before, of course. So they were definitely devoted towards measuring scientifically, but it was always to validate this notion of hierarchy that they already had. And then in the mid 20th century, science was catching up with itself with the DNA sort of discovery, Francis Crick and James Watson, double helix. And that completely shifted the perspective and the direction of science. Neo-Darwin synthesis of genetics, ecology and behavior. This is what we're going to be delving into, this world of synthesizing the genetics, the primates, and the skulls and bones discovery, and understanding behavior and our relationship to the environment. And again, this gets into what Darwin really was intending, was to understand human differences based upon our adaptation to the environment, and that we vary because of our adaptations to the environment, not because there's a supreme hierarchy of Eurocentrism in which Europeans are put at the center of the map and everything else is lower. So there was some you could humanizing, I guess, of our exploration of the study of physical anthropology, and we started to look at primates, other primates, as being an extension of us, and that we were part of that evolution descent from chimps and bonobos. So we no longer continued to dissect and kill who we thought, because genetically we had evidence now that chimps and bonobos and great apes were our cousins. They are our cousins. And so when we're killing and dissecting and using them in that sort of inhumane manner, then, you know, it was unethical. And so there was a shift in physical anthropology, to say the least. So the second chapter, we're going to get into more about the science of anthropology, and there's a little bit of a conflict in calling anthropology a science because of what I just said. When you try to put humans in a laboratory and isolate them, as science typically does, you're crossing some ethical issues. So we can't do that. We can't go into prisons and measure brain size, head size, and that's just not, it's not something that we do anymore. It's ethically, to say the least, problematic. But however, science is all about observing and questioning, and so that is what we have within anthropology that is very rigorous, is questioning and observation, which we'll talk about. So the $1 million question that comes up in another $1 million question that comes up in anthropology is our relationship to religion. It is a little contentious relationship, but it doesn't have to be. And we will explore this relationship to religion in the next chapter in more detail. But most all my students have some sort of religious background of some sort here in the South, and this is a class where we have to accept religion, of course, and at the same time accept that it's different than science and it's different than anthropology. But they can coexist with each other, and that's something that we will talk about in more detail. We'll also talk about what Darwin discovered and his 5-year journey. And then we'll discover what he did not discover, and what he could not see into the void of this sort of black box of that was producing human life and other life forms that were different based upon the relationship to the environment. He couldn't see DNA. He couldn't see the cellular level, right? He could see that human life and all life was producing very differences, that every generation overproduces, but there are certain individuals that do go on to procreate and certain individuals that do not. He could see that. That's physically something that's observable, but he could not see what was creating the differences in populations. And so that's the biggest sort of unknown that he had. What was creating the differences? Anyway, that's where we got to stop. And I did record this video, so if anybody wants to go back into it, it's there. It'll be there in eLearn. I'm setting up in the unit. I'll show you on Wednesday where I'm keeping these videos, but I'm keeping them inside the module of eLearn for each unit, not for the chapter part, but the unit part. I'll show you that on Wednesday. Okay. Are there any last minute questions? I'll hang out for another minute or two to answer any questions. If not, you'll have a good rest of your day. Thank you very much, Nancy.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Bye-bye.